Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Church of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the Starcross Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 339 and we're covering Ganymed Spes 60 to 61 on education and synthesis. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about how culture is at the service of the good and societies and individuals and should be free to develop. Today, we're going to continue chapter 2, the proper development of culture, and we're going to start our last section of this chapter, section 3, which is called Some More Urgent Duties of Christians in Regard to Culture. The theme for today is that we should encourage a growth in knowledge and leisure. Remember, these find ultimate meaning in God. Our first paragraph today is paragraph 60. It has 3 subparagraphs we'll read in 2 parts. A, knowledge is growth, and the church supports this. Knowledge is growing, and the church supports this. B and C, we should encourage higher education, but also respect blue-collar culture. Let's read A. It is possible to free the most of humanity from the misery of ignorance. Therefore, the duty must consonant with our times, especially for Christians, is that of working diligently for fundamental decisions to be taken in economic and political affairs, both on the national and international level, which will everywhere recognize and satisfy the right of all to a human and social culture, in conformity with the dignity of the human person, without any discrimination of race, sex, nation, religion, or social condition. Therefore, it is necessary to provide all with a sufficient quantity of cultural benefits, especially of those which constitute the so-called fundamental culture, lest very many be prevented from cooperating in the promotion of the common good in a truly human manner because of illiteracy and a lack of responsible activity. The Council Father just recognizing something that is true, that there has been a growth in learning in the 20th century, and even more so since this was published. Canada, not too long ago, recently passed a milestone where 50% of those 25 and up had at least a bachelor's degree university. I think it's the first large nation to do so. I think maybe Monaco or Liechtenstein, well, definitely the Vatican had that for a while. But as a nation with, 10 million plus people, I think it's the first one. And this is important. We have all these different types of knowledge, and we need to lead, especially with things like rights, with politics, with economics, so people can understand it, so people can make good choices. And it's good to promote knowledge, both in general and in specific types like those areas we just mentioned. Each person has this dignity, and dignity is supported by education, by understanding. That helps show forth our dignity. And we promote the common good of humans through culture. Illiteracy is harmful to humans. It's not good for us not to know, how to read and write. In our society, even more so, as it's moved more towards literacy, this is actually one of the dangers that has been mentioned about recent developments like TikTok and things like that, where the reading level is now for the first time seeming to go down, which is a very serious concern for educators and people like that. And I think we have to take that very seriously. Moving on to 60 B and C, they talk about how we should encourage higher education, but also respect blue-collar culture. Blue-collar just here being, laborers and workers and farmers and things like that. So let's read it. B, we must strive to provide those men who are gifted the possibility of pursuing higher studies in such a way that, as far as possible, they may occupy in society those duties, offices, and services which are in harmony with their natural aptitude and the competence they have acquired. Thus, each man and the social groups of every people will be able to attain the full development of their culture in conformity with their qualities and traditions. C, everything must be done to make everyone conscious of the right of culture to culture and the duty he has of developing himself culturally and helping others. Sometimes there exist conditions of life and of work which impede the cultural striving of men and destroy in them the eagerness for culture. This is especially true of farmers and workers. It is necessary to provide for them those working conditions which will not impede their human culture but rather favor it. Women now work in all spheres. It is fitting that they are able to assume their proper role in accordance with their own nature. It would belong to all to acknowledge and favor the proper and necessary participation of women in the cultural life. 60B here is really emphasizing that value of higher education. And not just for some people of some culture, but for people of various cultures based off competence, which will develop people in different areas. I personally come from a very long line of people who are extremely highly educated in Canada. Well, at least it goes back to my great-great-grandpa, who was the astronomy professor at McGill in Montreal back in the 1800s. And his daughter got a university degree, and she put it on her gravestone. Her gravestone has her name and then BSc, just to indicate she has that. And then my grandma and then my mom all have degrees. Yes, I go back 4 generations with women, about 3 generations with women and 1 more with before me who got them. And there is a certain natural aptitude, a certain growing up in a family like that will predispose you for that. But we shouldn't just be like, okay, those of us whose parents went to university can get to university. We need to look at what is the competence. And I would say that in my family, most of us had the competence as well because of that kind of genetics and upbringing and things like that. And each person here has the right and duty to develop culture around him. There are conditions that can hamper this, like oppression, or there's areas of devaluing culture or forcing people to work such long hours they can't spend time in culture. Here they note that farmers and workers have this. And we need to value the culture of manual labor. We need to have those things that can be good. I know, for example, my parents moved out to the country in Canada when I was in high school. And I never really participated in the rural culture because I had 1 year left in high school. I was driving into my high school in the city because we were close enough to the city to do that. And I had already been accepted to the local state university off my grade before I started grade 12. I had good enough grades for that. And so I never really got involved. But one of the things I noticed is that for them, like 2 nights a week are curling, and everybody in town is on some curling team. And it's a big part of culture to go curling and to be on these curling teams and things like that, or to go and watch if your family members are on it. And yes, that's not the highest level of cultural production or anything like that, but there is a valuable culture there that these farmers, some who have been there for 100+ years and generations, really developed through things like that. Yes, this is a stereotypical Canadian cultural thing. Curling is where you have those big rocks and you slide them on ice. My dad was pretty good, but as he's gotten older, he's kind of declined. He was pretty good when we first moved out there, I would say. Anyways, now women can work here as well, as it notes, and that will affect business culture. That will affect different things. I know, for example, my mom was one of the first women in engineering at her university. And she tells me stories about how the study hall had to have some pictures of women, not dressed so modestly, removed when she was getting to that year of engineering, because they realized, we can't have these pictures up if there's going to be a woman studying here. And in those ways, like things like that, I think it's good to have that. And they changed the culture to avoid those kind of objectifying of the female body and things like that. Moving on to paragraph 61. It has 4 subparagraphs. A and B are about as knowledge grows, it's harder to form universal synthesis. And then C and D is about it's good to use leisure for relaxation, but ultimate leisure is found beyond oneself. So let's begin with A and B. A. Today it is more difficult to form synthesis of the various disciplines of knowledge and the arts than it was formerly. For while the mass and the diversity of cultural factors are increasing, there is a decrease in each man's faculty of perceiving and unifying these things. So that the image of the universal man is being lost sight of more and more. Nevertheless, it remains each man's duty to retain an understanding of the whole human person, in which the values of intellect, will, conscience, and fraternity are preeminent. These values are all rooted in God the Creator, and are being wonderfully restored and elevated in Christ. 61b. The family is, as it were, the primary mother and nurse of this education. There, the children in an atmosphere of love more easily learn the correct order of things, while proper forms of human culture impress themselves in an almost unconscious manner upon the mind of the developing adolescent. The Council notes that as our knowledge has grown, our disciplines have grown, it's harder to form a complete synthesis. There's a saying that St. Albert the Great might have been the last man to know everything that could be known, and he lived, 800 years ago. And these studies, because there's so much knowledge in so many different areas, studies become more and more specified, where somebody isn't just a doctor, they're a doctor of this specific organ and really don't know other organs of the body necessarily so well. And this can have a challenge in that people are less trained across the board and things like that. But there are certain areas of knowledge about dignity, about rights, about politics, about general knowledge we still need to have for all these different people. Even if they have way more knowledge about some specific area. And that's important, because these give us values. These give us values that are rooted in truth. Finally, on 61b, it talks about the family, and the family forms us all. This is often almost imperceptible. Little things that I notice from different families where, coming from different backgrounds or in different situations culturally, that they form their kids ever so slightly differently. And even taking a step back, my own culture, I can recognize certain aspects that are different from different cultures and how that's formed in there. For example, my parents had the attitude that, my dad was always insistent, get a degree, get married, have kids. That was the order of to do things. But he was always very open to whatever degree I kind of wanted to do, as long as I did it well. When I was very little, from when I was maybe 5 to 14 or so, I wanted to be a paleontologist, dig up dinosaur bones. And my dad seemed to support me. Then I moved to computers and electrical engineering, did that until I was 19, did 2 years of college in that, and then I felt the call of the priesthood. And he supported me in all those things. He didn't say, oh, you're going to be this or that, or you're going to take over my family business or things like that. And that's a different value, where other cultures would be very much, you're going to take over my family business, or you're going to have this specific profession that is not. My parents raised me in a kind of, general white American Canadian culture, have that attitude, right? So, and they formed me in that culture, and those are good things. This is all good about my parents. Let's move on to our last reading for today, 61c and d. And it talks about how it's good to use leisure for relaxation, etc. But the ultimate leisure, the ultimate end, is found beyond oneself. C. Opportunities for the same education to be found also in societies of today, due especially to the increased circulation of books and to the new means of cultural and social communication, which can foster universal culture. With a more or less generalized reduction of working hours, the leisure time of most men has increased. May this leisure be used properly to relax, to fortify the health of soul and body, through spontaneous study and activity, through tourism which refines man's character and enriches him with the understanding of others, through sports activity which helps to preserve equilibrium of spirit even in the community, and to establish fraternal relations among men of all conditions, nations, and races. Let Christians cooperate so that the cultural manifestations and collective activity characteristic of our time may be imbued with a human and Christian spirit. All these leisure activities, however, are unable to bring man to a full cultural development, unless there is at the same time a profound inquiry into the meaning of culture and the science of the human person. At the time of the Second Vatican Council, they are noting how there is so much more opportunity for education and knowledge due to books. Today, a lot of that has moved online, but it's even greater. You have so many educational videos to give you a general overview. peer-reviewed publications are moving more and more to a model of charging the ones publishing or getting donors or something like that, and then not charging to read them, which offers another opportunity for knowledge. It does note there's less working hours. This reduction is probably less dramatic than I think the fathers of the council thought, and honestly, it's not as dramatic as most people wished for. Now here, it notes the good of leisure. It can help us relax. It can help us learn stuff. It can keep an equilibrium in our body. All these things are good. All these things are beneficial things we can do with our leisure or recreation time. And Christians can support this and do various things in this regard. But, as 61D notes, the last one, leisure is ultimately found in God. Relaxation can only point so far. And so we need to understand the human person in our relationship with God, in our wider metaphysical reality, to really understand culture. We need to understand God and our relationship with Him to really get the fullness of leisure. So thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarCrest spruce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one time, monthly, or join the StarCrest Patreon. Tomorrow, we are going to continue with the next paragraph of Gaudium et Spes. That will be paragraph 62 on culture is often contrary to doctrine, the challenges of culture. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast.
Amen.